Welcome to CX in the Wild Season 3. Let's catch up with Dennis on Safari now.
All right, so thank you so much. What a crazy thing, just shooting through New York, and then you're at the Starbucks. I popped in. Tell my audience or our audience who you are and what you do, and then let's get to know each other.
Absolutely. My name is Karan Thaker, and I'm a lead design strategist at a financial services company called Northwestern Mutual here in New York City, and we primarily focus on insurance, life insurance, investment products. So I lead efforts across the organization to really help define out the experience strategy for our end consumers, the advisor group that we have. The experience strategy that really focuses on how we deliver the products all the way from initial engagement through their experience of being a client with Northwestern.
Well, and little Northwestern Mutual, I think you're like ranked 90 on the Forbes Fortune 500. So
yeah, we definitely are up there. We've fortunately had some good years, recently, and there's a lot of demand in the market as well when it comes to the products that we have, and the company is growing at a very rapid pace. I get to work with some really cool people.
I'm sure you do. So before we jump into all the jargon and the world, what about you? Tell me about you. So I'll tell you about me because I'm a father of 3. My wife and I just celebrated our 29th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
We lived together for 5 years before that, so together for a long time. My children, I have the ones that are at home. One is she's a cheerleader in Dallas, and the other one is a frat boy in a Texas college.
Hey.
So, and my wife is also in advertising and marketing. She does business affairs for one of the more prestigious agencies. So we sort of eat, breathe, live marketing experiences. And for the last year, I've just been able to travel around to different countries and cities and meet people like you. I'm so fascinated about the similarities, but also the differences between CX leaders in the industry. And so that's what brought us together. So that's sort of my interest. And this podcast is really about catching conversations that haven't been rehearsed, and we just get to know each other. So that's a little bit about me. So tell us, you're married, you have kids?
Sure. So I'm not married. I don't have kids.
Okay.
And I
Lone wolf.
Yeah, lone wolf. Sure. I've lived across multiple countries. I grew up in India and then spent a lot of time in the States. Then spent a lot of time in Canada, and now I'm here working in New York. So over the years, I've been around in terms of traveling quite a bit as well. And most of my folks are here in the U.S., so I've got family nearby. As for working in this whole space, I really grew up in the space of computer science and cognitive psychology. So that's where I've been to. That's what I've been to school for. Computer and information sciences.
At first, I feel like computers, technology, and cognitive behavior, at first I think they're totally different sides of the spectrum. But when I think about AI, they're starting to be kind of the same thing, aren't they?
Yeah, and way back when I finished school, I'm dating myself here, but essentially understanding behavior and technology, they didn't have many parallels in formal programs, and the focus was, how do we build products? How do we focus on delivering products that are, faster, better, cheaper? But then when you bring in, elements such as AI, elements such as human behavior into the mix, all of a sudden your horizon expands into the space of not just making products easier, faster, better, but making the whole organization easier to do business with. And that's where the crux, I think, of marketing and engagement really joins forces with all the tech work behind experiences.
Well said. Wow. Moore's Law. Are humans going to get smarter, double in smartness every 2 years once this kicks in? How's that work?
Oh, I should hope so. I think in general, we should be, as humans, we should be very open to embracing technology. Of course, there are helpful guardrails around a lot of this, and we know that the whole space of AI, has a big component of guardrails on it. I think there is a large chunk of the industry or just consumers that tend to have an aversion to change, and AI is just the next big wave of change in technology. So it'll be a while before I think the general perception will become better, but I feel it will enable the day-to-day lifestyle of humans around the world.
Hopefully, I'm going to throw this thing at you because I just based on the 5 minutes I've known you, I think you'll appreciate this. We hear a lot about bias in the workplace. I hear a lot of HR conversations about bias, but I realized just this week I was talking to another gentleman and I realized I might have an AI or a reality bias.
Okay.
And let me break this down for you. The conversation was posed. They said, "Hey, how do you feel about this virtual realities, metaverse, all this?" And I was like, I said, I think people like reality. And I think being completely submerged in another alternate reality, that's maybe people may not have the appetite for that. I guess my point, the way he took it was, I have a bias towards reality. Okay. And the reason I think this is because he set me straight just like this. Mm-hmm. He said, when you call customer care and you tell them that you're having a problem with your thing and they look it up and they fix it, or they don't, he said, is that reality? Because you're talking to someone across a device, somewhere you can't see, who knows where, doing who knows what on what systems, that you're completely separated from any reality that they're in. And he said, reality is like you and I sit here and we're talking. And he said, so is that reality or is this reality? And I was like, I suddenly realized my reality, I don't even know what it is anymore, if I'm being totally honest. So I think towards your conversation about cognitive behavior and the marriage between technology and what we experience is such a fun career to have. How are you enjoying it?
Oh, I love it. And the thing is, you're navigating ambiguity almost every day with every project, because the whole space of social sciences or, behavioral economics, if you will, or, cognitive behavior, it has so many angles that apply to technological roadmaps, whether it's building digital products or building experiences that are brick and mortar, like the Starbucks cafe that we're sitting in now. I feel all of those possibilities are so untapped at this point, and we're at the beginning stages, if you will, of infusing social sciences into experience design, customer experience strategy, those efforts. And in general, business, when we look at strategy, there's this idea of being measurable, being actionable, being very, very focused on the bottom line, and all that is well and great. But when you bring in the emotional component, if you will, with the experiential design, or when you bring in the social sciences component, all of those heuristics or biases, if you will, they've also been proven to a large degree by experiments all around the world. So there is a very heavy amount of evidence to rely on that when you're planning your near-term or long-term strategy. Challenge becomes on convincing the stakeholder groups across large organizations, because it's a different way of doing business. It's a different way of problem solving, and it's not easy to think it through.
It's so true. I'm a teacher at a university, and I teach the students some things, but moreover, I think I get a little more real with my own children. And I try to explain to them, because one is working in the business world now, and the other one is going to be entering at some point the workforce. And I try to explain to them the changes in the landscape. And I just said, we have the Industrial Revolution, which was really about conquering and efficiency. And then we had the internet, the information revolution. And I think we're in this area of the dawn of an experience economy. And I think the first conquering and industrial piece of it, I think there was a lot of fear in that culture, fear of failure, fear if you don't succeed, fear if you don't do your job right. The information in revolution really gave us this knowledge and wisdom, but acumen and intelligence. So you went from being strong and fit and conquering to smart and savvy and scalable or whatever. And I think now we're in this new economy where I like to think we have empathy coming in and understanding. So you go from doing to learning to and knowing to understanding. And I think that's what this era is about understanding ourselves, understanding our relationships to economies and businesses and products. And I hope that AI plays an instrumental role in creating a sense of equilibrium. I think we see these spikes in the stock market either way, and we react to those as cultures. And I fantasize about a world where everything just slightly trends up and gets better every day,
Oh yes, and you're an optimist, and so am I. And stuff like this, it excites us because the future is long, and there's so much more to be done. And the space of AI, you mentioned industrial revolution, information revolution. The way I see it, the information revolution sets the stage perfectly for AI because the human brain can only comprehend so much info at any given time. But artificial intelligence can process information at, a way faster speed, which means all the mountains of information that are with organizations, that are within industries across the board, whether it's healthcare or pharma or retail or tech or whatever have you, all that information can be evaluated that much faster by AI efforts. And that evaluation isn't at a point, I think, where it's repeatable, where it's predictable. And that's what makes people uncomfortable. That we have a lot of data, but maybe we should have some of our guys and gals to evaluate it, as opposed to do it via some kind of, again, AI engine or analytical process. And because that ambiguity is front and center in a lot of, again, large organizations, it leads to some push and pull in terms of should we or should we not engage in the AI efforts, or how would we feel about AI? In the broad spectrum of things, you see large companies like Google or Tesla even, right? They've got a lot of, computer vision or artificial intelligence, whether it's Google's automatic, phone answering or Tesla's computer vision in the cars. But people get worried about it at the time that, well, no, it's AI. Is it gonna, backfire? I see the silver lining in that, in the sense that we have a ton of data that such systems are able to dive through, and they're making those same systems that much more accurate for the betterment of humanity, for our own sake. And that gives me hope.
Yeah, I agree with you. We share that. Yes. If I have to pick one, I pick optimism.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is interesting about this whole transformative landscape, you said big organizations, but I think we all have these personal aversions. I mean, I think big organizations sometimes, if I'm being fair, just represent one person's also insecurities or securities amplified, scaled up.
Depending, yes.
But I want to shift gears a little, because I can tell we're talking about some bigger topics than just like, how do you do CX?
Yeah.
I was in Dubai, and I learned a couple of things by talking to the leaders there who created Expo 2020. Are you familiar with that?
Yes. Yes. I was actually quite keen to join that, but then of course, so many things changed, right? Tell me about it.
Honestly, one of the most profound opportunities in my career to meet with certain people on Earth. I guess it's expected because it's Dubai and it's Expo, but I met with the leaders, the chief of staff, the head of marketing, the head of environmentalism, the architecture. So every aspect of each facet, maybe not every, but multiple facets of Expo and how they created it. And for me, being at one extreme to talk to those leaders and say, what's the secret, or what are you doing that's different, or how did you even if it's just a matter of how did you accomplish this? They spoke about this. These are my words. They had an adaptive learning culture. So they responded in the present to meet the objectives of the future. So there was very little judgment, and there was very little fear of risk. It was about achievement. And that slight change was a thing that I've been hearing a lot in corporate cultures in the US. And everybody says, yeah, we're fail forward fast. And they say the things, but I've been my experience inside some organizations, the existing culture is so rooted in these industrial or these information technology eras that it's hard to be really optimistic and learning and adaptive and embrace challenges and change. It's a whole different mindset. So I will say, I was starting to be a pessimist until I got there, and then I realized, if you can pull off Expo by just doing it right, doing it this positive way,
and even through the pandemic,
so there was that. So I think, and then I'll tell you something I learned this week, because I was at the Reuters CX show and the marketing show. Here's what I'll tell you. This was the first show where I had moderated any panels where there were C-suite leaders from multiple different industry segments. And I actually had to stop the conference on the stage and say, wait a second, did I really just hear this? All three people said now in their organizations, from the very top, the C-suite, the boards, they have embraced fully customer-centric transformation. And what they've really done is they've co-signed on the culture of change within their organization, powered by empathy or understanding. But I've been hearing lip service or aspirations about this for the last 5 years. And on stage, there were not 1, 2, but 3 Fortune 500 companies where they were like, we're doing this, and it's for real now. So I do see change. I've said a lot, but I just wanted to contextualize like where my mindset is from research,
of course,
anecdotal research, and then I want to get your take on this thing. Mm-hmm. So in Dubai, I talked to this woman who, Ala Al-Shurogi. Okay. She spoke about, she was in charge of the experiences, the virtual, and she changed my perception of what we're talking about. And it's all about all these changes in this new space. Here's what she said. She's like, yes, the journey. Yes, the moments that matter. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes to all of that. But she said, what their experience and she was fascinated with is the intersection of two humans in the same journey. So I'll give you an example. She said, a mother and a daughter, they come to Expo, and they've lived in their own homes, they have their own personalities, but they go to an experience at Expo. And when they leave, it's almost like the DNA of their experiential mind now has a shared experience that redefines them entirely than anyone who hasn't been in that experience. Go.
Well, 100% agree with the idea of having additional, let's call it, players within the experience. It allows you to, again, introduce different thinking. Then it introduces more perspectives into the challenges that you might be discussing. Given this very specific example in terms of mother-daughter, you mentioned go to the expo. It makes me think of this idea that we often talk about within experience design. It says when people do difficult things together, or when they go through a challenge together, they build a bond. the trust deepens. They start to think of that experience as a bit of a core memory, if you will. And
Oh my God, yes. Go ahead. I'm just
of course,
double checking this.
and when doing that together, the people who help orchestrate the experience also learn a lot of things, because you are not only seeing it from the outside in terms of powering the experience for the consumer, whether it's a customer or, in this case, mother-daughter, but you're also seeing how the consumption of information, results in additional pain points, additional ideas for downstream work. And when I look at this whole space in business, and that it's about the mindset shift, or the top down support for being focused on journey, yes, moments that matter, yes, but where I'd go even further is, when you put multiple players like this in the experience, the moments that matter give you a lot more depth in terms of what matters to certain demographics, or what doesn't matter to certain other demographics. Like the mother might be caring about something totally different than the daughter, and when they both come out of it, they might uncover different things for each other. And that's the experiential side. But for, say, the Expo 2020 organizers, the big learning, I would hope, would also be about how much is feasible for us to deliver for those different demographics. Because sometimes we think, we're after one market and we can do a lot there, so we should chase it. But another opportunity might be that this other demographic, let's say the daughter in this case, in the experience, she might have some latent needs, unmet needs, that we might not have kept in mind, or we might not have done something about, because we're chasing after that one demographic. So when I think just experiences in general, or planning, engaging, a lot of the intersections also come down to how commercially viable is the experience for one segment versus another. And the answer might not be equal in all the cases.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I was thinking, if I was designing an experience, I don't know how to test this, but let's say you and I, we have different personas, but we go to this Starbucks. And if Starbucks did some sort of stunt here, flash mob or whatever, that appealed to both of our behaviors that are outside of our target personas, creating these shared experiences, I wonder if they supersede like the demographics. If you could really just say, you get all these people here, do this one thing, they're all aligned.
Oh yeah, and I feel there are a ton of ideas out there that do that, right? Not every product has like targeted audiences. In some products cases, it's like a blanket persona, or blanket segment of the market. We know, for instance, like Apple, right? The particular customer base for some of the Apple Watches is different than some others.
Yeah.
And that means they've designed it differently, but in general, they have a blanket segment in that the Apple Watch, for someone who is open for technology, into fitness, this and that. So that union of different personas is, again, in my experience, that it's an additional body of work that, as an organization, large or small, you have to keep in mind, in that personas are different than segments. You might have the superseding market segment, which the example you mentioned, right? That flash mob isn't. But Dennis's persona versus Karan's persona may be different. So some organizations, I feel, they confuse personas and segments, in that we're going after this one and only that, and that leaves everything else behind.
I agree with you. Targets, segments, personas. All right, because you seem like such an expert, I want you to diagnose me. So,
okay.
I feel like I have multiple personalities. I feel like I'm constantly changing throughout the day, and sometimes I feel like I feel very consistent when I'm at the gym at a certain time. That I get the gym bro persona guy. I know when I'm locked in there. I know what I'm doing. I'm not thinking about stuff. I get here, and suddenly I'm like the scrolling TikTok guy, the playing Clash Royale guy, the ordering something from the bar here, or eating. Like, I feel like my persona only lasts like maybe like I feel like TikTok. I feel like my persona only lasts like 1 minute, and I'm cycling through like 100 personas a day. Is that real, or am I just schizophrenic, or both?
So you're definitely not schizophrenic, and I think that's very real. In fact, we see that. I've seen that over the course of my career in terms of organizations, but it's the idea of not being binary, in that a user persona isn't locked, in that you create something, lay it on paper, and then that's all you use in your strategy, design, whatever efforts across the company. Now, the example you mentioned, in that you have a gym bro, moment, and then you have TikTok scrolling moment. Those are the types of ideas or characteristics that researchers or service designers or basically CX professionals, like, we uncover when you adopt certain methods, whether it's doing some very specific ethnographic research, whether we do specific shadowing with clients or with just consumers in the market, and 50 other methods. And when we uncover all of these, let's call it modes of thinking, or moments in your day or in your life, that allows us to paint a more real, a more live picture of who you are as a persona. And I would like to say a lot of companies are doing that, but in my experience, I've seen companies that also don't do that, in that it's very black or white, in that what's the general demographic of that person, and let's look at, I don't know, a person's age, their salary, their household, this, that, as opposed to their modes of thinking, as we just discussed. But it's a growing area, a growing field, and I'm hopeful that strategy, research, design, everything that comes together into like singular efforts.
Yeah. That's so nice that you do have this perception of those things. You're probably like, where's this conversation going? I think what I try to explain to my students, and I would explain to this audience, is I'm really not trying to get people to do what you do. I'm trying to get them just to think the way you think. So I think you really shared a lot of different aspects of your thought process that are relevant to the audience. But I would like to shift the conversation and wrap this up with just a couple of things. What, in your experience, you're recently done a lot of different things. Do you have some things that like I should be paying attention to, other CXers? What are your recent epiphanies, and what is your vision for our industry?
Oh, it's a big question. But I have given some thought to, like where we're headed as an industry. A couple of things come to mind, right off the bat, Dennis. One is that I feel our industry, or when we talk about experiences, there's a strong support for the desirability of the experience for the consumer, in that go research first, be very, very focused on what they like, don't like, bring all the assessments together, and have a point of view on what will be the most desirable. Where I encourage different teams I work with to explore, and also just in the industry, is that I wish the industry also spend more time on looking at how viable is the experience going to be for the business. So the commercial viability, the economics behind the journey, the finances behind what will power that experience. That tends to be left out from a lot of experience design conversations. And it's new in general because it touches on the ROI of design, and that's a whole another complex space. But I feel that's an area where there's a lot of untapped potential. It's unexplored right now. So that's one thing. And the other thing is really just around what I've learned over the course of my career in terms of what I share, is that when we look at problem solving in this space of experience, one has to be very comfortable with making decisions without a lot of data, and then changing those decisions because you found some new data. A lot of people, a lot of industries, companies.
Adaptive learning.
Yeah, adaptive learning and rapid experimentation. There's this idea that let's evaluate all the data and get to a focused problem. So we have one clear thing that we're working on. And the moment that shifts, people start to get worried. But if we move to the idea where we make a quick decision, we try something, we learn it, and then we make another decision. It's tough to get into that mode, but it has served me well, and the teams that I've seen work very well adopt that mentality because they're navigating ambiguity and they're comfortable with failing fast.
Yeah, I'm so optimistic that you said that, because my business, where I'm the driving cultural factor, I continuously find myself moving us back to this place of rapid experimentation. You know, and I see a lot of people come work for us. They almost have a regret when they don't have the answer. And I'm fascinated by that, because I live in a world where I have no answers. I have no idea, what is happening or going to happen next.
How exciting, right?
Yes. But at the same time, I am trying to make things better around us. So it is about this, what you're talking about, it rapidly experimenting. Be curious,
Be data oriented, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
But be comfortable with changing things. And again, that really drills down to the culture. It has to be like bottom up as well as top down. You have to have the right air cover, of course, to support that thinking, that level of appetite in terms of change and risk. But then you also have to have people who are curious, who want to problem solve in a different way.
Thank you for that. I didn't ask you about the work that you're doing now, because I don't think I need to hear a story about the work that you do now to understand or give you feedback. Your psychology and your philosophies, you're aligned to the very greatest leaders that I've met who have other successful projects. So I'm certain the day-to-day work you do is thoughtful and curious and exploring. Exploration leads to the new frontiers. And I think that's where the new is. I want to share with you, yesterday I had the opportunity to have a long discussion with Karan Thaker. She's the chief marketing officer for Major League Baseball.
Okay.
And we were talking, and she enlightened me. Certainly when you see people who we think of them and their titles as like, oh my God, but the fact that the work they're doing and the way they're thinking about things is even more impressive than the campaign or what have you. And she really enlightened me, and I'll just share some of these, I think, because as a brand, one of her core elements of engagement and experience is storytelling. Okay? I think you talk to most major leaders, they're going to, especially if they're in marketing or brand,
I know, right?
They're going to throw the storytelling thing at you. But it wasn't just lip service with Karan. She was talking to me about her concern for the messengers.
Tell me more.
Yeah. So it's not just about the idea for her. It's who carries that idea. The story lives through the messengers. She had this care and empathy for the humans in our ecosystem who carry the stories. It's not just about broadcasting or, delivering or implementing. For her, she cares about the way the story lives on through people. And, she talked about, that's what she said. Here's what I saw. In my research, I just thought, before I meet with her, I want to see what's going down in TikTok and the internets. Aaron Judge hit the 60-second home run world record. The algorithm in TikTok showed that hit as the first video. No surprise. But a trained eye like mine or yours, that video was shot from behind home plate. That wasn't a video from the stands. Somebody from Major League Baseball had the camera ready for that moment. The second video was from the stands shooting across his mother's reaction, right?
Hey.
The next one was the ball going out and the person catching it going into the stands. Here's what was interesting. Shot by 3 different people, all arranged in the algorithm who sequenced the story accurately for the brand. And if we're being totally honest, they own the rights to those players. And so then from a business perspective, managed. So there you have a leader who's managing the business affairs, the algorithms, the moments that matter, and clearly had all of the different messengers in her forethought as she crafted her wider strategy so that the ecosystem, the environment of content favors her. So the message for me there was the hidden gem that so many people miss are the messengers.
I like the example, and I couldn't agree more in terms of the delivery of the story. The example of using it to create these videos, it makes me think of this idea of connecting all the moving parts of any business together to ultimately make it seamless, make it seem consistent. And of course, there's a lot of work that goes behind 3 different cameras, 3 different videos, AI engine, this, that. But it came from that top-down vision, right? That we need to have it seamless. And
the orchestration.
Yeah.
She's not a practitioner of CX. She's an orchestrator of CX.
And clearly, a very big supporter of experience-led efforts.
Yes. It helps when your entire brand is 100 years of
course.
Perfect.
They've got a lot going on.
Yeah. So, well, I appreciate talking to you.
Thank you.
What I hope
Likewise.
is that my audience is your audience. Is there anything that you feel like you want to get out there into the internet from your own words or perspective? You seem like such a pioneering leader with your cognitive behavioral sciences and
being kind. I shared a lot of thoughts in terms of what I wish people consider more, whether it's within their businesses or just in general when it comes to problem solving. One thing.
Yeah.
Sorry. Were you going to ask something?
No, you go.
One more thing I talked through as you were just giving this example of front stage, backstage, is I often say surface to core thinking across the organization. For any project, any idea, any experience, when we start by thinking, is it something we need to start from scratch, or is it something that already exists and we need to figure out the current state of the experience before we solve for the challenges, let's say. Having the mindset of exploring from surface to core, it allows you as like a CX professional, whether it's in a service designer, design thinking, marketing, whichever capacity, it allows you to build these partnerships across the business because you're knocking doors, not just for what the consumer is going to experience in terms of your digital apps or your, physical stores, let's say, but you're also knocking doors with the operational teams who are managing the service delivery, or the data teams who are really piecing together the mechanics or the analytics of how well or not well we're doing. And those teams are behind the scenes. Those teams aren't necessarily the obvious stakeholders that we typically reach out to on projects. So those relationships that we might build with a surface to core thinking would pay off in spades downstream, because indirectly you're weaving them into the experience design efforts. And my favorite part is that you're showing them how this new way of problem solving can also be adopted in their side of the house. And I feel ultimately it results in better morale, better engagement, and as a CX organization, it helps you build more and more credibility in the organization. That's the last thing I'll share.
I love that. Thank you for those words of wisdom and putting it into action. Is there a place do you have your own social media feed? Do you do Twitter? Do you do anything where this audience may be able to follow you personally and talk more, or like?
Absolutely.
And if you don't want to, that's fine. I just
Of course.
Everybody's a social media person these days.
Yeah, I know, right? So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And every now and then I'll tend to post some things, whether it's something about our leadership or something about behaviors in our space. So that's the best way to reach me or follow my train of thought. I'm not as much of an active user on on Twitter, but LinkedIn is the way to go.
Okay. Well, and your name and stuff will be in the post.
Okay.
Thank you for joining me on CX for a while. I'm going to hit stop now.
Thank you for having me. Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming on this adventure. To catch up with Dennis for CX news and industry events, visit www.denniswakabayashi.com.